Well, good morning, class, or good evening, or good whenever you're watching this. Get a cup of coffee, put your feet up, get your notes out, and we're going to have class. We're going to finish week 3, Biblical Financial Concepts. And since you're not here to remind me, I've reminded myself that we should always start with prayer. So join me, please. Heavenly Father, you know everything about money. You know everything about economics. You are the author of all wisdom. And Lord, I pray that you give us wisdom, Lord. In James it says, if anyone lacks wisdom, let him ask of God. So we're asking for you to unveil your word and the truths in it for us. Help us to get on the right track, and bless everyone who hears this. Amen. All right, week number 1. Do you know your memory verses? What's the first memory verse? Without looking. The earth is the Lord's and everything in it. Memory verse number 2. One of the most important. Be diligent to know the condition of your flocks. Pay close attention to your herds. My friend texted me this morning. He has a farm near my farm, and he told me to be on the lookout for a calf. He had a calf get loose. He's diligent. He knows the conditions of his flocks, and he knows his herds, and he had a calf missing. He found it. All went well. Okay, do you have a plan? Can you see the plan? Okay, I have to thank my lovely daughter who is our cinematographer today. And we are taping this, by the way, it is Sunday morning. We're taping this at church and no one is here. The plan, do you have a plan? Jesus said nobody builds a house without first counting the cost. So do you have a plan? It might be very simple. Make more money, spend less money. That's a great place to start if you're in a situation like that. Okay, that was week 1. Week 2, briefly review memory verse number 3, also a very important verse. The rich rule over the poor, and the borrower is servant to the lender. So memorize these verses, meditate upon them, and look over your notes. We went through the 5 steps. Dave Ramsey has a very nice video on YouTube, the 5 things that will make you wealthy. And he also goes through the 7 steps. I think we got through all of those. And this Titus 2:11, this little passage down here, very important. Now, last week in class, we got started on week 3. So if you have that paper, the plans of the diligent lead to profit as surely as haste leads to poverty. I've made some really stupid mistakes and with money by getting in a hurry and not seeking counsel and not taking my time. Fortunately, I've, in the long run, made more positive decisions than bad ones. The plans of the diligent. To be diligent is to pay attention. Do you have a box? Every week I have to talk. Do you have a box? Do you have a shoe box? Do you have a filing cabinet? Do you have a notebook? Are you keeping track of things? Are you diligent to know the condition of your flocks? Are you writing down what comes in and what you know is going to go out? Are you saving for emergencies? Do you have your $1,000 emergency fund? Or do you have a $50 emergency fund? We have to start someplace. Are you keeping track of your daily spending so that you can get things under control? And we talked briefly about co-signing loans, and there are several references here in the first page. Please look those up. Please meditate on those, and please do not co-sign loans. And then banks ask you 2 questions. Can you pay back the money? That is the ability. And will you pay back the money? That is your desire. And a few of you missed class. Let me very briefly go over how does a bank make money. Can you see up here? We're good? All right. How does a bank make money? Here's the bank. People put money into the bank and they get interest. This is called savings, and the bank pays you interest. Not very much. Banks are not paying very much interest today. Rates are very, very low. Banks do not hold money. Banks do not hold money. They put money to work. So they loan money out, loans, to people to buy houses and cars and other things. And they charge you, let's just make the math real easy. Let's say they pay 1% on your savings account and they charge 4% when you want to buy a car. That's how banks make money. There's nothing wrong with that. It's a service they provide for you. You could bury your money in the backyard or put it in your mattress, but it wouldn't make you any interest. Now, that brings us to the new stuff today. How does a mortgage work? I'm glad you asked, because I want to tell you how I thought mortgages worked. I was totally wrong. Here are two rectangles on your paper: 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. Okay, so 30-year mortgage. A lot of people do 15s. Dave Ramsey recommends a 15 and no longer. But let's say you have a 30-year mortgage. And when I had a mortgage years ago, the payment was $700 roughly. And so we'll use that number because it's easy. And I thought I was very wrong. I thought that when I made my $700 payment, that about $660 of it went to pay off the house. This is called the principal. And about $40 went to the bank in interest. Made sense to me. I was wrong. And if you have any experience in banking, you're laughing right now to realize how wrong I was. This is what, just cross that off after you fill it in. This is not the way it works. So in the second rectangle, 10 years, 20, 30 years. Let's say you have a $700 payment. Now these numbers are not perfectly exact, and we do have one of our class members has worked in banking, but this is close. It's close enough for the example. If you're making a $700 payment, about $40 goes to pay to the house, and the other $660 goes to the bank. And over the course of your 30 years, this is how the payment schedule goes. And so the first few years of your mortgage payments, most of it goes to the bank as interest on the loan, and only a little bit is paying off the actual house, the principal. So the first payment you make, the bank takes approximately, these numbers are approximately $660 in interest goes to the bank. Which is why they have giant, expensive buildings and really good furniture in them, and they all smile when they see you coming. Even after, let's see, 600, right here would be about $350. There's $100, 200, 3. Even after about 10 years, only about, and I'm approximating again, only about $200 on every one of your payments goes to actually pay for your house. And in this case, it would be $500 per payment. This is after 10 years. Very few people keep their house for 30 years. They stay in a house. I think the average is 3 to 5 years that people move. It's rare that someone stays in a house for a long time. My mother lived exactly 50 years in her house. That is an oddity. Most people move, and then they sell the house and they buy another house, and they start all the way over again. And this goes on and on. This is why the bank sends you these enticements. You're pre-qualified for a home equity line of credit. A new kitchen looks good on you, because when you get up into here, they tell you, look at all the money you have saved. It's in your house. It's your money. You should use it for a vacation, a new car, a new kitchen. You deserve it. And they want you to borrow this money and back up so that you're back here, and they're making even more interest on you. The rich rule over the poor, and the borrower a servant to the lender. How can this be? It's their game. They set up the rules to the game, and I want you to understand the rules of the game. Interest. House. Now, if you're 25 years into your loan, you're up in this section here and you're not paying that much interest, it may not be to your advantage to refinance. Rates are low. It would be a good time to refinance, but I'm not going to get into that because I'm not an expert. At the bottom of the page, you should sit and think about this for a while because that's frightening. At the bottom of the page, if you purchase a $165,000 house with 20% down, that would be $33,000, for 30 years at 4% interest, which is a fair interest rate. $165,000 for 30 years at 4%, your payments will be $916. Again, these are approximate. That includes taxes and insurance, which you have to pay to the bank. $916 per month, and you will have paid, when this 30-year period is done, you will have paid $329,760, which is almost exactly double the $165,000 house, and the bank made $165,000 off of you because the rich rule over the poor, and the borrower is servant to the lender. You may want to stop the video and think about this for a few minutes because it's frightening and you want to avoid this as much as possible. Buy a smaller house, take a shorter term mortgage, 15 years, and take an extra job and make extra payments. The nice thing about extra payments, and this is very interesting, every time you can pay an extra payment, which is easy in the first 10 years because the principal payment is small in this first period here. Every time you make an extra payment, and make sure when you take out a mortgage that you can make extra payments without penalty. Every time you make an extra payment, you do not pay the interest. Now that's very important. So if you get a few $100 extra or a few $1,000 or you get some extra at work, extra time, extra money, and you can make an extra payment, you will have saved yourself in here hundreds of dollars that you do not have to pay interest, and you will be moving this way on your payment schedule, which is good because we want to get to the end of this. When you take money out in home equity line of credit or second mortgages, you're moving back this way, which is bad. Our goal is to get out of debt, pay off our house. Okay, turn that page over, please. Automobiles are generally the second most expensive things that we spend money on, and so I have some ideas for you to save money on your car. Number one, at the top of the page. Number one, keep your current car as long as possible, as long as it's practical. Keep your current car as long as possible. But I have to have a new car in 3 years. Everybody else, all my friends buy new cars in 3 years. What will my friends think? If your friends think less of you because you're driving a 5 or 10-year-old car, they are not your friends, and they do not love you. Keep your current car as long as possible. Now, I've been extremely fortunate and blessed with cars. For the past 44 years, I've had 4 cars. In 1976, I had a brand new Chevy pickup truck. I drove it for 13 years, and then I sold it. In 1989, my mother sold me her 12-year-old car for $1. Thank you, Mother. I drove it for 6 more years till it was 18 years old, and I sold it to some kid in Toronto. In 1995, I bought a used pickup truck, and I drove it for 13 years. And in 2008, I inherited the green truck that you see me driving now, and I've been driving it for 12 years, since 2008. It is a 21-year-old, almost 22-year-old pickup truck. It's not a piece of junk. It's a nice car. It's safe. It drives nicely. It runs well. It's paid for, and I like it very much. So let's keep our current car as long as possible. My friend Dennis, I've told you about my friend Dennis and some other examples. Every 3 years he would buy a new car. He bought exactly the same color and exactly the same car, the same style. He didn't want people to know he had a new car, so he bought the same car, a white 4-door Volkswagen sedan. And I said, Dennis, you always have a car payment. He said, I'm afraid the car will break down, so I always want a new car. I said, Dennis, cars break down all the time, new cars and old cars. Finally, after years, I convinced him. He kept a car 10 years once, and he was amazed that he didn't have car payments. Number one, keep your current car as long as possible. Number two, when you pay off the car, keep making the payments now to yourself. The average car payment in America is $499 a month. Let's say you have a $300 car payment and you come to the end of it, you've paid off your car. Give yourself a raise of $50 or $100. Instead of putting the $300 away, put away $200 or $250 every month. $200 a month will save you $2,400 a year. You can save that. You're saving up for your next car. I don't have my calculator with me. Let me think now. $2,400. And if you can go 6 more years with that car that was new and it's still in good shape and you have a good mechanic and he takes care of it, you can keep that car 10 years easily. You will have saved about $14,000 if you just put away $200 a month and keep the current car that you have. And then number two, when payments end, keep saving that amount or some amount for your next car. That's number two. Number three, the goal to get ahead with cars. Pay cash for your next car. It doesn't necessarily have to be a new car. It could be a newer car. Our goal is to pay cash. Our goal is to avoid loans. Our goal is to avoid paying other people interest, because the rich rule over the poor, and the borrower is servant to the lender. Now, car loans work similarly to mortgages, but not exactly the same, but they are similar. But let me show you in a visual what we can do here. I'll just use this up here. Here is time. Here's time as time goes on. And here you are, and you want to buy a car. And let's just pick a number, $20,000. I looked yesterday, you can buy a brand new Kia Soul, brand new. Manufacturer list is $17,500. You can probably get it less than $17,500. That's the list price. You can probably get a better deal than that. $17,500, a brand new Kia Soul, for example. Let's say you want a $20,000 car. So you borrow $20,000. This is the negative part, and here's the positive where we want to be. And so you're going to pay that car off in this many years. So here's the hole you have to dig yourself out of. However, because of interest, it's not just $20,000 that you're going to pay back. It's going to be about, let's see, that's $20,000. You're going to actually have to pay back, sorry about that, about $23,000, and the hole is deeper and the slope is steeper because of interest. And interest, we want to avoid paying interest. And so to reach your goal to pay off the car, you have to start from a hole $23,000 deep. However, if you can keep your current car, get rid of the payments when you pay it off, and if you can save a few $100s a month, then you will reach your $20,000 here. $20,000 saved, you can go buy a car. However, because now you're earning interest, because you're saving money, you will get to your 20,000 even sooner than you thought, because now you are earning interest. Now think about that for a while. My wife drove her last car. It was 18 years old before we traded it in. It ran perfectly fine. Normal maintenance over the years that we owned it and drove it. It was a perfectly fine car. It was 18 years old before we bought another one. We'd saved our money. We went to the dealer. We worked out a price. I walked over to the bank, got a cashier's check, paid him cash for it. Here, save your money. Drive your car until it's impractical and not possible to drive it any longer. Now, of all the cars you see out on the road, 85% are leased or loans on them. 84.5 exactly. 31% of those are leased, and 54% are on loans. And so those people don't own their cars, and they're paying interest. Approximately 15% have been paid for. So of every 100 cars you see on the road, 15 of them are paid for. The other 85 have loans or leases against them. Another nice thing about keeping a car as long as you can, after you pay off the loan, you don't have to have full coverage insurance, and you can reduce your insurance bill. I do not have coverage on any of my cars because I drive older cars, and it's not worth paying that insurance money. If I total my pickup truck, my 22-year-old pickup truck, what would I get for it? A couple $1,000 from the insurance company? It's not worth it. I will take the risk. I will self-insure myself. Okay, there's a strategy for mortgages. There's a strategy for your cars. Next section, credit cards. What's the interest rate on your credit card? Do you know what it is? You take out the statement, you look at the statement. I don't know what the rates are on my credit cards. I don't know. I don't think I've ever known because I don't care, because I pay them off every month. I do not pay interest. I do not pay fees. I don't use the card that much. Anyway, now Dave Ramsey will say you shouldn't, I don't know if he doesn't say you shouldn't have credit cards. He highly advises against them. They are the cigarettes of the financial world, as we've said. And if you can handle your credit cards, if you pay them off, if you can control the lust and desire to spend, and buy 5 pair of shoes instead of 1, or a new motorcycle and a car, and fix your house and new couches, if you can control that and you use a credit card, I'm not going to say anything to you. Dave Ramsey will say, though, be careful, and there are reasons. What's the interest rate on your card? I don't know. You should know, though, if you are floating a balance. What's the balance on your card? My balance is 0. Do you know what the balance is? Be diligent to know the condition of your flocks. And I know it's embarrassing, and I know it hurts, but get the paper out, get your statement out, find out how much you owe, and let's get working on paying that off. Number three question, how long have you carried that balance? You're paying interest, and even interest upon interest, and it's growing. And at the minimum, I forget the exact number, but they calculate if you pay the minimum payment every month, it will take you 10 or 20 or 30 years to pay it off. Credit cards can get you in a lot of trouble. Studies show, psychology tells us right here, we will spend 12 to 18% more by using the credit card than if we paid cash. Because when you take that green cash out of your purse or wallet, there's an attraction to it. You can see it, you can touch it, you can feel it. And it energizes the same places in your brain that cause pain to hand over that money, because we want that money. And so when you start paying cash for things, you will be more cautious in letting it go. But the credit card, it's just a little piece of plastic. It's so easy. Next section, a budget. Define the budget. Get out your phone, Google up the word budget, and it is simply an estimate of income and expenses. It's an estimate. We have a budget here at the church, for example. We use it as a framework and a guideline. We are not held to it. You are not held to your budget. When you have your notebook and you have your daily expenses and your monthly expenses, you know what's coming in. You know what's going to go out every month. These are your fixed costs. You can guess and estimate what your car maintenance is going to be and other things that will come up and your emergency fund, and you can keep track of things. So a budget simply is a practice, a guideline, a framework to work from. We have one here at the church. We work very hard on the budget to make sure everything gets funded properly, and we make changes to it as need arises. If one area needs some more funds, we can pull some from somewhere else. So it's just an estimate. It's something to work with. Budgets are flexible to some degree. We do not have to be perfect when creating them. Don't get hung up on making it perfect and predicting perfectly everything that's going to happen to you. We can make changes in them. A budget will have fixed parts, as we said, your mortgage, your car payments, and fluctuating parts, gasoline, food, repairs. A budget is simply a written, visual representation of your plan. Be diligent to know the condition of your flocks. Who begins to build a house and does not first sit down and count the cost? Then to finish out this lesson, there's an interesting little website, moneycrasher.com, and I found this little article, 10 reasons why you should not loan money to your friends and family. And there's 10 reasons there that you can see. You can go to that website and find that little article. It's rather interesting. To finish out here, a few notes. When we talk about mortgages, we don't usually consider mortgage a debt, because most of the time, as we've said, the price of your house, the value of your house will increase over time, and in most cases a house can be considered an investment, because say you pay $100,000 for your house, and in 10 years maybe you can sell it for $120,000, $130,000 if you take care of it, paint it, keep it looking nice. So houses and mortgages are generally not considered debt. And we talked briefly about student loans, and you'll find different rates on them. And I've seen rates from 3% to 7%. We can talk about student loans later. Well, that was fun. And thank you for tuning in. I will get this on as soon as possible. I will text you or email you lesson 4, which I will do that sometime this week. I'll make sure I have an email address for you. And please text me your questions. You all have my cell number. You can text me anytime. I turn my phone off at night. You will not bother me at 3 o'clock in the morning when you send me a text and a question. I love them. Thank you. God bless you. Be diligent to know the condition of your flocks. Amen.